Man, they got to be more aggressive this year, in my opinion, and they got to attack. Do you see him changing that philosophy, or is it just going to be him putting the pieces back on the chessboard? Same philosophy, just better talent.
It's hard for me to believe that, Jonathan Gannon could probably be more than what he was last year.
Well, that ain't winning football.
Hey, listen, your mentality, in my opinion, your mentality is your mentality, okay? And I get you're trying to win football games, but you can't protect players, when you put them out there. Everybody knows he's getting a paycheck every Tuesday just like everybody else, So you run your defense and you try to find out which guys can perform it, and the guys that can't perform it, their asses out of there next year. You bring in guys, who can perform.
As I said, I think you got to gradually build the passing game off of your strength. A guy that I respect, and I can't wait to see this post-game show, Mike Missanelli, and here's my guy, Seth Joyner, man, and I appreciate it. Seth, I always wanted to be on your team, and now we are, man. Welcome aboard, man. I always wanted to play with Seth Joyner, and now I get an opportunity to talk some ball with you, man. Welcome aboard, brother.
Thank you, man. Thank you. I'm looking forward
man. So we're teaming up again with 6ABC, and my question, though, is this. I think we got to put D Gunn in between you and Mike Missanelli. What do you think?
No. You might be right, though, because I got a feeling that Mike's going to be quite the antagonist all year long. I mean, he started yesterday by just poking the bear a little bit. And I'm like, he thinks that I don't get it, but I get it. It's good. It's good for TV. It's good for our show, that he's going to be like that. But I know how to control it.
Hey, if you can control Jerome Brown, you can control Mike Missanelli, man. Hey, Seth, I hope you heard a little bit of what I was saying. I mean, I think these fans and I think people are under some assumption because you added A.J. Brown, you drafted a first-round draft choice, that you're just going to all of a sudden reinvent the wheel here, and you're going to take Jalen from 28.8 attempts a game to 42 attempts and get up to what you did last year at the beginning of the season when you started 2-5. I think they got to run the ball and gradually build the offense through the passing game. Do you agree?
Well, my biggest question is whatever happened in professional football to, offensive coordination. If you've got these run plays that are successful, then where's the coordinated pass plays off of those same looks that makes the defense think that you're going to run the ball, but you're actually running play action off of that and whatnot. And listen, I get your point, but I do think that the pass attempts need to increase this year for Jalen Hurts because they need to find out long-term whether he can be the guy. I wasn't aware the second half of the season he was averaging 28 attempts per game. There were some games where, he barely, got over, got 20 attempts in a game. So, I mean, somewhere along the line, those numbers balanced out and went up. But I've been saying all along that he needs to be in the 30 to 35 attempts per game arena in order for them to be able to decipher whether he can be the guy. I think that if you're not Patrick Mahomes, if you're not Tom Brady, if you're not Aaron Rodgers, if you're not of that caliber, then to me, I think 40 plus attempts a game is a flirtation with disaster. Because when you throw the ball that many times, the law averages say that somewhere along the way, you're going to turn it over either via pass or a sack, strip sack, or something along those lines. But I'm not saying that the Eagles, have to come in and run their offense the way that they ran it last year. I believe that would be a mistake. Was it a mistake for them? And when I said it last year, Big Sil, I said, listen, the way they started off, they set themselves up for failure. You started off and Jalen Hurts is throwing the ball 40 plus times a game throughout those first 7 games. And I'm like, listen, you're arresting this kid's development. Those 7 games, in my opinion, were somewhat of a wash and a throwaway because you don't take a first-year starter and put him out there and have him throwing the ball all over the yard. You run the ball, you run play action pass, you use his skill sets, the things that he are strong at, and you knew that he was strong at those things because you made the adjustment the second half of the season. So why would you come out and do that? So I just believe that, you run the ball, you got 3 really good backs, you brought in 2 more that could be of, great help to you. You establish the run, you go play action pass off of it, you use all the skill sets of Jalen Hurts, and you balance your offense up. They don't need to be 70-30 pass. They don't need to be 60-40, pass to run. They need to be somewhere in the neighborhood right around, I would say, 55-45, pass to run ratio. And if they can do that with success, with the improvements that they have on the defensive side of the ball, if they can get better on the special team side of the ball, then they're going to be in every single game with an opportunity to win, in my opinion.
Absolutely, Seth. And that's I gradually building this offense because they built an identity in the second half of the season. And like you said, I think that Atlanta game was fool's gold in the fact, and that's where all those numbers were set. They were throwing the ball 37, 38 times. Then they realized that after week 8, they couldn't do that anymore. I want to switch you over to this now. I was bringing this up with people yesterday, and I don't think they understand when I say arm talent. They automatically assume I'm saying arm strength. Now, there's some variable that's part of that evaluation and that equation. Of course, you have to have the arm strength to throw the out. The out pass is one of the most important passes that a quarterback can throw. However, when I look at the guys around the league and I see great passing ability, accuracy, on time, knowing where to throw the ball, all that is arm talent. Do you think Jalen develops, and do you think he has enough arm talent to be able to really win a job and be a superstar player in this league? Seth, I haven't seen this arm talent yet.
Well, listen, being in the position I got a chance to watch every single throw, every single play, multiple times that this kid threw last year. What people don't realize is that, we always tend, like I'm reading this book right now that talks about, the differential between the negative and the positive. Okay. A positive thing that we see has far less power than the negative thing we see by darn near 5 to 10 times. Okay. Meaning that we watch Jalen Hurts make a bad throw, we'll remember that 10 to 5 times more than the one good throw that he makes. Okay. So I can take you back and I can go and look at his great throws, look at the plays that he made where, no one really made a big deal of. I think about the ball he threw to Devontae Smith in the end zone. Guys draped all over him, pinpoint. The only place he could put it was where he put it. That pass was 40, 50 yards down the field. I could think about, a pass that he threaded to Dallas Goedert between 2 defenders in a home game last year. There are a lot of plays that I can think about, but, when you're thinking about this situation from a negative tilt, you'll seem to forget the good throws that he made. Okay. Now, every single quarterback that plays in the NFL makes some bad throws. Okay. So this belief that he doesn't have the arm talent, that he doesn't have the arm strength, in my opinion, is unfounded. If you go back to the year that Jalen Hurts was drafted, out of all the quarterbacks that came out that year, there was only one quarterback drafted that year who had a stronger arm than Jalen Hurts, and that was Justin Herbert. He was the only one that threw the ball with more velocity, and the differential was, I think, the measurement. I think Justin Herbert was like 54 and Jalen Hurts was like 52, somewhere in that neighborhood. So they're really not that far off. So when you watch Justin Herbert and you watch Jalen Hurts, you would say to yourself, man, what a big difference between the quarterbacks. Okay. In my opinion, this is the biggest difference, because I've seen quarterbacks with rocket arms and I've seen quarterbacks, with jelly arms, and I've seen some succeed and I've seen some not succeed. I think back about a guy like Jeff George. I played against Jeff George. I don't think I've ever seen a guy throw the ball with the type of velocity that he could put on it.
I've never seen a guy throw a ball 100 yards like that.
Yeah, but the problem is, he couldn't get the ball where it needed to be all the time. And then I played with guys, who haven't had that stronger arm, but was successful. You want to know what the difference is, in my opinion, Dan? The college game is so much different than the pro game, okay? Specifically in today's football game, because you got these teams that run these RPOs and they run these options and things like that. And when you run the ball with great efficiency, if you go all the way back to Tim Tebow, when you run the ball with great efficiency in these offenses, when you go play action pass, you get what you want. You as a quarterback, you get to stand back there and say, who do I want to throw it to? Because I can guarantee you there's going to be 2 or 3 guys down the field that are wide open, short, intermediate, and deep. Okay.
And gigantic windows.
Yes. So the point that I'm making is that these guys don't have to throw on rhythm and they don't have to throw with timing. The NFL game is completely different because the coverage is so good. Even if you get a step on a guy, you're in a situation where if you don't let that ball go on time and with rhythm, then that pass is going to be intercepted. It's going to be knocked down. And a lot of times we misconstrue that as, oh, he didn't have the arm strength. No, he didn't let it go when he should let it go. When you're doing a 3-step drop and that ball's got to come out and you got to speed out, by the time that guy plants his foot at 5 yards on the speed out, that ball better already be out of your hand and it better be outside where your guy can get it or it's an incomplete pass. Same thing with a 5-step or a 7-step drop. If you throw the ball on time, and that's the difference between Justin Herbert and Jalen Hurts right now, is a clear understanding of where the ball should go and a clear understanding and trust that when I let this ball go, that it's on time, it's on rhythm, and because it's on time and it's on rhythm, guess what? That guy, my receiver, I trust my receiver that he's going to catch it. If at 10 yards you got an in route, when you stem with your outside foot, then when you step at 9, that ball better be out of the quarterback's hand. Now, it takes a lot of trust and a lot of practice in order for a quarterback and a receiver to get there. My point is Jalen Hurts is learning how to do that. And when he learns how to throw the ball on time and he learns to throw the ball on rhythm, guess what? His completion percentage is going to go up and his accuracy is going to go up. And we're not going to be having these conversations. Now, he's still got to go and do it. If he doesn't learn how to do it, then he's not going to be the quarterback that the Eagles need and want him to be. But if he learns how to throw the ball on rhythm, on time, okay, and with great anticipation, that's what all of that boils down to. Tom Brady sometimes is throwing to a spot. He's not throwing to the guy. Right. He's throwing to a spot anticipating that guy's going to turn around. That guy's going to be there when that ball arrives. And that's what the great quarterbacks do. That's what allows them to be looked at as accurate. And that's why, their completion percentage, especially in today's game, is so doggone high.
Seth, a couple last questions on offense before I go over to the defense here. I want to throw a number at you here. A.J. Brown, his 3 years at Tennessee were this. He's averaged 68 catches, 998 yards, 8 touchdowns. And this is with Ryan Tannehill, and I think a little bit maybe in his first year with Mariota. Maybe I don't know if Mariota threw to him a little bit, but not elite quarterbacks. But am I expecting these numbers to improve when he comes to Philadelphia and goes on that field in September and is up there at Ford Field, that these numbers are going to go to 1,400 yards? Or is his true asset going to be this, Seth? Third down catches like DeAndre Hopkins, where he's going to go yak and get you that big first down. And in the red zone, when you got jump ball, you got a beast like that. That's why his touchdown numbers are high. He's got 8. I would expect that number to improve because the red zone wasn't really a great part of the offense last year. You put a guy like that in a jump ball scenario, I'll take A.J. Brown 9 times out of 10 on that. So if people are assuming 1,400 yards, he's not necessarily going to be that. He's going to be a red zone demon and a third down receiver, kind of like Michael Irvin was. Do you go down that line with him?
Listen, I don't even think that he has to be all of that. Okay. I think we're undervaluing, the true reason why the Eagles needed an A.J. Brown. Okay. Listen, he's still young for
25.
Okay. He's had some years in the league. And the Eagles needed a veteran wide receiver. Listen, there were a lot of guys where they picked that they could have drafted to improve the talent level on this football team. But when you look, all the young guys, all the young wide receivers on this football team, they're all second, third year guys. So you needed a veteran presence, a guy that could teach these young guys how to be professionals. Okay. Not only did you add to the talent pool that you already have, but now you make it you got a wide receiver. And I think that Devontae Smith can develop into that, but he's purely an outside guy. You don't want him going across the middle too much because of his stature, even though he can do it. But when you add an A.J. Brown, now look what you do. You've broadened the spectrum of talent across the board. You know, what a great defensive coordinator is able to do. They're able to, what is Bill Belichick, okay? If Bill Belichick is playing against the Eagles this year, what's the number one thing he's going to do? He wants to take away A.J. Brown, okay? But if you got A.J. Brown taken away, now you got to deal with Dallas Goedert. Now you got to deal with Devontae Smith. Now you got to deal with, you know, if they can be creative enough and Kenny Gainwell can learn how to pick up the blitz, you know, now he can be a big factor in the passing game as far as, you know, him being in the backfield, you motioning him out, creating matchups. Okay, now you got so many weapons across the board that Bill Belichick can't zero in on just taking away A.J. Brown, because when Dallas Goedert starts cutting you and Devontae Smith starts cutting you and Kenny Gainwell starts coming out of the backfield wreaking havoc, now you got to reconsider how you deploy your defense and who you're going to try to take away. So what A.J. Brown brings is a veteran presence and a heightened level of competition and a heightened level of talent at the wide receiver position, which is going to stress out defenses much more than they were last year. Yeah, listen, you got to worry about this guy, A.J. Brown.
Oh, yeah.
You didn't have to worry about Jalen Reagor last year, you know, and that's going to push everybody else. I'm really interested to see when you look at this Eagles wide receiver core. I mean, I want to be there front and center to see the level of competition. I mean, they got like 13, 14 wide receivers, and like 5 of them can flat out fly. Yeah. You know, I mean, so you're competing for roster spots. You're competing for playing time. I mean, I think we know who the starters are going to be. You know, you're probably going to get, you know, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, and Quez Watkins. Okay. But these guys aren't going to play 100% of the time. So that means that, you know, John Hightower, probably in his last year of observation, is going to have to step up. Then you go and you bring in Zach Pascal, you know, who everyone's saying he's one-dimensional. He's got something to prove because, you know, the Colts were willing to depart with him. You got this other guy, Deion Kane, big body that can straight out fly. You got Devin Allen, who could just straight fly. So you got all of these weapons, and I'm interested to see. You're only going to be able to keep 6 or 7 of them, depending on, you know, who can play special teams and who can't, you know, and I'm sure I'm missing some guys. But what A.J. Brown brings is a veteran presence to an already crowded wide receiver room that can teach these young guys how to play and how to be a professional, but also you're creating so much stress for these other these other defensive coordinators and their minds and how they think about how to take away, which weapons to take away on, you know, the offensive side of this unit. And it's just going to be crazy to watch, you know, the chess match between a guy like Bill Belichick and a guy like Nick Sirianni and Shane Steichen, and how you deploy your pieces and who he decides to take away and how you take advantage of these matchups.
Last question on offense before I go over to defense, Seth. Who do you think benefits the most from A.J. Brown being in that wide receiver group? Dallas Goedert or Devontae Smith? Who do you see really in a breakout where you go, you're going to see this guy really put up some great numbers? Look, I mean, Pro Football Focus has ranked Goddard the 5th best tight end in the NFL. When you look at Devontae, I don't think he's going to get 1,000 yards this year because, again, the attempts are going to be, and the targets, in my opinion, are probably going to be more towards AJ. So that doesn't mean he won't be 19 yards a catch. You know what I'm saying, Seth? 18 yards a catch. That'll be effective, too, with a great running game. But who do you think benefits the most from him being in that offensive huddle?
Well, let me just say this. I don't believe that Devontae Smith is the type of diva that feels like, he's got
agreed.
1,000 yards. I think he's the type of guy that's only concerned with winning. And if the team is winning and his numbers aren't really where they need to be, then he's not really concerned with that. I think over time, when he gets to a point where his rookie contract is up, he may become a little more enamored with how many targets he's getting and how many yards. That's just a natural thing, because the team is going to come to him and be like, well, here, this is what your numbers are. This is what other guys look like, they're in your class. This is what they're getting. So he's going to be concerned down the road. But I think right now, his concern is just winning football games. I think that's just the way that he's wired. Now, to answer your question about who benefits the most, I think Dallas Goedert does, because, he's going to get matchups with linebackers. He's going to get matchups in the middle of the field with safeties. And I just think that he's a coverage nightmare. I'd be interested to see, who the four I can say, who's better than Dallas Goedert,
Edwards, maybe in Baltimore, Kittle, Kelsey, right?
Hey, listen, Kittle, Kelsey, Waller, and
the kid Edwards in Baltimore,
and Kittles. I mean, who is Edwards? I mean, I haven't seen a whole lot. I haven't seen a whole lot from Edwards to say that he would be better than Dallas Goedert. And Dallas Goedert, in my opinion, is a much better tight end than some of those other guys, because he's willing to block, in a way that those guys aren't willing to block. He's more of an all around type guy.
He's better than Schultz in Dallas, that's for sure.
There's no doubt about it. I would, if I'm estimating, I'm going to say Kelsey's one. Because of injury, I'm gonna walk Kittles back just a little bit, because even when he came back last year, he wasn't, the Kittle that we traditionally know. He's been good, but I think he'll take it up another step this year, coming off the injury from the year before. But Kelsey, I think Darren Waller's an absolute beast. Kittles, and then maybe, and I think Dallas Goedert falls right there. And I think, if Kittles doesn't get back to where he was, 2 years ago, that you can flop him and Goedert. I think if Goedert got the kind of targets that those three receivers got, that he'd be a Pro Bowler hands down. Nobody, it wouldn't even be up for debate, because I think that once he gets the ball in his hands, he's a difference maker. But I think that last year, because they ran the ball so much and they threw it so little in the second half of the season, he didn't get the type of targets that he needed. There's no reason in the world why Dallas Goedert shouldn't be getting anywhere between 8 to 10 targets a game. That may be impossible now that you bring in A.J. Brown, and you got Devontae Smith out there, and you got Quez Watkins, who the Eagles have admitted that he was underutilized last year. I don't know. Maybe the only way he gets 10 targets a game is that, they throw it 40 times a game. And are we expecting for Jalen Hurts to be successful under those circumstances? I mean, only time will tell.
Absolutely. Mark Andrews too. That's Baltimore there. Let me flip you over to the defensive side. Seth, to me, man, I mean, if I am Jonathan Gannon, you've got all these new horses in the building. You got to be in a 43. You've got to be in a 3 and a 1, maybe a wide 7 up front, and you got to get penetration, man. I do not want to see two gapping idiots again like I did last year, and those linebackers getting knocked off their grape lines because the D-line doesn't know what they're doing, because they're being asked to do stupid two-gap shit where you get the linebackers killed. I mean, you've got speed, size, and strength. Why sit and catch and let the linebackers move that? See, people don't realize this, right, Seth? If you're sitting here in a two-gap and you're two-gapping that guard in front of you, most of the time that guy's going to knock you at least a half a yard off. That half a yard now is a yard and a half, and that linebacker's got to go back more on a scrape lane. Here, you're giving up 3 yards of carry before the guy even hits the line of scrimmage. Then you're playing that zone coverage, which even opens it up more. Man, they got to be more aggressive this year, in my opinion, and they got to attack. Do you see him changing that philosophy, or is it just going to be him putting the pieces back on the chessboard, Same philosophy, just better talent.
It's hard for me to believe that, Jonathan Gannon could probably be more than what he was last year.
Well, that ain't winning football.
Hey, listen, your mentality, in my opinion, your mentality is your mentality, okay? And I get you're trying to win football games, but you can't protect players, when you put them out there. Everybody knows he's getting a paycheck every Tuesday just like everybody else, So you run your defense and you try to find out which guys can perform it, and the guys that can't perform it, their asses out of there next year. You bring in guys, who can perform it. The problem is I don't know how diverse this defense can really be.
Even with all those pieces, Seth?
Hey, listen, come on, man. What makes you think that he's not going to be, that what he ran last year isn't really who he is?
No, that's who he is. I get it. But I'm saying now you've got Hassan Reddick, who you've got to do this. You can't really line that guy up in a 34 because he's going to get planted by a tackle. So you got to play him more in an outside linebacker and rush him off the edge. Okay, you can't. And on third down, what if you put a tight end on his ass? He's got to cover the tight end, or are you going to keep his hand in the dirt? I think this guy's got some chess pieces to figure out.
Well, that's my biggest concern. My concern isn't the talent. My concern is Jonathan Gannon.
Yeah.
And how he's going to deploy all of these pieces that he has. I've said it before. You can't line Hassan Reddick up in a consistent four-man front against at 6'2", 235 pounds, line up against, a offensive tackle that's weighing 330. You can't do that on a consistent basis. I think that Jonathan Gannon really likes to deploy a lot of five-man look, but because Javon Avery could not do all the things that he needed him to do in those situations, that brought Hassan Reddick to the fold. Okay, so I think that when you see Hassan Reddick on the field, you're going to see a lot of five-man look. The problem with the five-man look is that if you play zone behind it, you're going to have to, one of those guys is going to have to drop. And who are you going to drop? You're going to drop him? You're going to drop you're going to drop him, or you're going to drop BG? Now, it's not that Hassan can't do it, because being in Arizona, he had to groom some linebacking skills. Okay, so now he has that in his repertoire. But going to Carolina and being back with Matt Rule, who understands who and what he is, that he's more of a pass rusher. Now all of a sudden he comes up and he explodes, with double-digit sacks. Can the Eagles use those sacks? Absolutely. So now you get to a point where you ask yourself, how strategically can you use Hassan Reddick? Okay, in my opinion, you got to line up in your five-man front. Then you got to shift from a five-man front to a four-man front, and sometimes get Hassan Reddick off the ball and now send him from off the ball with games with the defensive end and with the tackle in the middle with that 3 technique. Okay, you got to do some of that. Now you got to get him off the ball, and sometimes you got to drop him in coverage. You got to put him one-on-one and bring pressure from the other side. You got to morph your fronts. You got to morph your defenses, and I haven't seen Jonathan Gannon have the propensity to do that. Until I see that, I don't have a whole lot of confidence that he will. I get the sense that we're going to see the same thing we saw last year, but you're going to have a guy like Hassan Reddick, who's much more talented and has much more ability than Jannard Avery to A, be able to drop into coverage without getting lost, B, rush the passer because he's proven that he can do that. And then when you're in your 40 look, from time to time, you can put him in defensive end in obvious pass situations, but he can't live there, on first and second down. Because if I'm an offensive coordinator, my running game is going to be tailored to attack him.
Absolutely. I mean, Trent Williams is going to smash that guy in a ball game. And I would say this to you too, Seth. I think that's probably some of the mistakes that they make in Dallas with Micah Parsons too. Dude, I get it. He can cover tight ends and he can cover a back out of the backfield. That guy's true strength is his hand in the dirt, getting around that hula hoop and getting in that backfield and creating havoc and putting pressure on the quarterback and getting that guy off his spot. So I can't wait to see how they use this guy.
I'm not so sure that I don't agree with how Dan Quinn has used him, though, because he's used them in spots. I mean, he's used them all over the place.
I like them moving him around, Seth.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's my point. When you have a guy that has that kind of skill set, you as a defensive coordinator, you need to get on your whiteboard in the offseason and try to figure out how many different ways can I deploy this guy. Now, a lot of times what happens is a guy may have that kind of skill set, but he doesn't have the intellect to be able to decipher all that information. That guy's got to understand and figure, okay, when my hand's in the dirt, this is my responsibility. When I'm off the ball, this is my responsibility. When they line me up as Sam linebacker over here on the tight end, this is my responsibility. Not every NFL player who has the kind of skill set like Michael Parsons has the intelligence to be able to learn and understand what you're supposed to do in 5 or 6 different positions.
Absolutely. TJ Edwards, let me take you to the linebacker here. I don't know about you. I'm rooting for the kid. Got a contract extension in the 2021 season. I'm rooting for him, and if I'm him, I feel probably a little motivated because of all the hype that Nakobe Dean is getting. I don't know, Seth. I mean, Nakobe Dean, we'll find out how many people were right or wrong about him and where he went in the 3rd round. By the way, the 3rd round's not a bad pick. It's a great premium pick. It's the most – people don't realize this. The 3rd round is the most productive round in draft history. So just so people know that, it's not the 1st round, it's the 3rd round. Montana's out of that round, a lot of folks. So, but TJ Edwards, do you think Nakobe Dean sits on the bench for the first half of the season? Do you think he ends up beating him out, or do you think Edwards, with all of his knowledge, because Seth, that defense turned around when he started balling out. I mean, he was filling the gap. He was making tackles, and he rallied that linebacker group. I'm not saying he's the most gifted guy, but he was kind of an inspirational guy in there with his play.
It'll be interesting to watch because it's situations like this where you're challenged is where you really find out what a guy is made of, okay? So the Eagles know that they needed an upgrade at the linebacker position. And my goodness, have they got it in a major way. Not only the drafting of Nakobe Dean, but also the signing of Kazir White.
Yeah.
Okay? So now you've got talent galore at the linebacker position. I still believe that Davion Taylor can be effective. That kid can figure out how to get healthy and stay healthy for a full season. I believe that he might be the most talented guy that they have from a sheer ability standpoint, because the guy can flat out run. He's a hitter. He's just got to learn how to stay healthy and digest this defense, where he can get out there and be the best that he can be. But I like the fact that you've created the ultimate level of competition at the linebacker position. Now, listen, Nakobe Dean's got to come in and learn this defense. He's got to come in and learn what the speed of the game looks and feels like. He's got to learn how to, because he's not going to be in a situation where you play in front of a defensive line that keeps you clean and just lets you run to the ball like he did at Georgia. He's going to have to learn how to deal with offensive linemen, tight ends blocking down on him, all of those different things. He's going to see a whole lot of different things on this level that he didn't see on the collegiate level, and how he adjusts to that. If TJ Edwards is half of what we believe him to be, then he's going to accept the challenge and continue to get better, because it's going to be another year in this defense. So he has that as an advantage over Nakobe Dean. The biggest difference I see between the two is speed and how you play in the passing game. Nakobe Dean is a guy, who seems to me to be highly intelligent, understands and knows how to route read, and understands, how teams try to attack Georgia from a passing standpoint. He was always where he needed to be and made plays in the passing game. I think that TJ Edwards is a passing game liability. Listen, if I was an offensive coordinator, I would game plan that kid. Whenever I could. If there's a passing situation, I'm trying to figure out the Eagles, their defensive passing schemes, where I can figure out how I can get that guy isolated on a wide receiver or a fast back coming out of the backfield. Because he's proven time and time again that, listen, he's a good player. He's good against the run, very smart, but he just doesn't have the physical skills to be a major player in the passing game. I think that's why they signed Kazir White, because that's his specialty. That's his specialty, rather. A guy who's been, transformed from a safety over to linebacker. They can run with running backs out of the backfield. They can cover tight ends. That's very good in coverage. You go back and you look at his stats. They were really good. When you look at Staley and his comments about losing him, in free agency, he wasn't very happy about it. He talked about, what a difference maker this kid could be. But I'm looking at all the pieces that they have at linebacker. I don't think that this is going to be a year unless these guys aren't getting the coaching that they need. I don't think that the linebackers should be, a weak link on this football team this year, because with all the competition, the cream's got to rise to the top. Who wants to start? Who wants playing time? And that's really what it's going to come down to as you watch this defense, at that position throughout training camp.
Couple last questions for you here, Seth. Here, Hassan Reddick, White, Nakobe Dean, a corner, a safety. You got a lot of different faces now in that huddle now. And you know this, when you're a free agent, and John Lynch told me this, when you're a free agent or you're a guy that comes into a new building, he said to me when he went from Tampa Bay to Denver, his first year, he was always trying to learn what the scheme was, and he always felt like he was a step behind because he wasn't really understanding until his second year in Denver on what they were asking him to do, and all of a sudden he caught up with everybody, because you're constantly – man, I tell people this. It's like learning Chinese versus Portuguese. When you go from one system to another, it's like learning a foreign language, I mean, they've got different terminologies. What you think is a shade 3 is something completely different to this coach. How much does that concern you with all these new faces in that defensive huddle? Especially with what we're talking about with Gannon and him putting these pieces. Hey, Seth, he could tell you one thing. I want you to line up in a 3 technique, and I want you to get outside and keep contained and make sure that you keep the edges safe. And you're like, okay, well, what's the technique you want? I mean, a lot of that goes into coaching too, right? It's a lot to ask of a lot of new guys.
Well, it's communication. You've had OTAs, you'll have training camp, you have 3 preseason games, to kind of work through all of that terminology. I agree, it's different. Even you talk about we've assigned numbers to these formations now. 12 personnel, 21 personnel. That allows us as the talking heads to be able to identify the personnel that's on the field. That doesn't mean that every defensive coordinator looks at it that way. Like 12 personnel was Jayhawk personnel. When I played for Buddy Ryan. So it's all different terminology and how you decipher it. I'm pretty sure Kirby Smart's terminology was different, for Nakobe Dean than what it's going to be here. It's how do you quickly translate, that same information, but with a different name. The other thing is too, when you look at these veterans, it's, you're going into somebody else's backyard. I can remember when I left Philadelphia and went to Arizona. Listen, I was one of the leaders on that defense. All of a sudden you walk into somebody else's locker room, and even though, you're one of the highest paid guys on the defensive side of the ball, you still have to have some level of respect for those guys who have been there.
Yeah, but Seth, you carried equity from what you did.
Yeah, you do. But you got to come in and you got to kind of feel the locker room out. You got to feel that side of the ball out, because that side of the ball, listen, you've got your alphas no matter where you go. Whether that team is a good team or a bad team, you got your alphas, and your betas are following those alphas, if you will. So if you're an alpha and you're stepping into somebody else's backyard, you got to, it's like two male lions, trying to make sure, that they establish who's in charge of that territory. If they're smart, they'll be like, okay, we'll share the dominance here and we'll share everything that goes along with it. But sometimes, Eagles are, within the framework of playing the game of football, Eagles a big deal. Underlying in a lot of ways if you don't have a big ego, if you don't think you're the best thing since sliced bread, if you're not bordering on the, I'm not talking about outwardly, I'm talking about inwardly. If
Yeah,
you're not
I get
walking, if you're not walking that edge of self-conceit, it's almost impossible for you to be a dominant force in the game of football. Now, again, you don't have to exert that outwardly. You don't have to be an a-hole, but inside, you better be thinking that there ain't nothing like me. There ain't nobody can stop me. Bring it. Because if your mentality isn't like that, you're playing against alphas on the other side of the ball and on other teams that are wired that way psychologically and mentally, and they will eat you up like good cake on your birthday.
Seth, don't you agree, though? It's because you lived your life with a sense of urgency when you played the game. Everything was this, today, now, what we're doing, what we're going to play against the Lions. Say that's your first game. That's a sense of urgency. And when you've got so many new faces, and then the coaches that I just wonder with Gannon. I mean, I don't see talent with him. And he's got the ability. And if you're a young player like the Kobe Dean, I think that makes it harder for him to establish himself when the defensive coordinator is still trying to establish himself. I mean, how can you create leaders when your defensive coordinator, you're not sure is a leader of your group?
Well, listen, that's the
you got to win in spite of him.
Well, but that's the catch-22 when you hire young coaches the way that, Jeffrey Lurie and Harry Roseman decided to go about this. Okay. I said last year, you've got a quarterback that's learning, you got a rookie wide receiver that's learning, and you got all of these veterans that are learning a new offense. And guess what? You got a head coach who's learning how to be a head coach for the first time. He's been a defensive coordinator before, but guess what? He's trying to figure out how to manage being the head coach, being over everything, and calling plays at the same time. Okay. So then we fast forward and we find out that by the time they got to week 8, he had turned over some of those duties to Shane Steichen to start calling the offensive plays. Now we step into, the 2022 offseason, and it comes out that guess who's going to be calling plays moving forward? Shane Steichen. So that Nick Sirianni can be more of an overall head coach and be everything to all 3 phases rather than just being locked in on the one side.
So you like that move?
Oh, I love that move. And I know a lot of people don't because, listen, Nick Sirianni is not going to walk away from totally what's going on the offensive side of the ball. Like if I was a head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles, I would hire a proven offensive coordinator so that he can run the offense. Hey, you go run it. When the crucial decisions need to be made, I'm on the headset. I'll chime in. But guess what I'm doing? I'm giving my guy over here on the defensive side of the ball as much help as I can so we can be dominant over here while I got the more experienced guy over here to actually run the offensive side of the football. Okay? So Nick Sirianni has got, Shane Steichen, who's never really been an offensive coordinator before. He's got Jonathan Gannon, who was only an offensive coordinator for the first time making calls last year. So you had all these young guys that are learning how to thrive in their positions along with the players that were learning. So not only were the players learning the offense and the defense and the special team scheme, but you had the head coach learning how to be a head coach for the first time. You had the special teams coordinator learning how to be a special teams coordinator for the first time, and the defensive coordinator learning how to be a defensive coordinator and call plays for the first time ever. Okay? So now you throw all of that into the mix and you wonder why the team struggled the way that it did year 1. It should be better this year, but they're still learning, Dan. They're still going to be learning this year how to be the best head coach that he can be, the best offensive coordinator that he can be, and how to be much more efficient as a defensive coordinator with an uptick in talent given to him by Harry Roseman this year.
I just don't like training wheel coaches that this is the NFL, dude. This isn't like the Canadian Football League or, the Arena League. You're supposed to be ready to rock, and you're supposed to have command of a room and all that stuff. I mean, I just don't like a training wheels quarterback, a training wheels head coach, a training wheels defensive coordinator, and then you're telling me you're going to develop that team and you fired Doug Peterson? All right, man, let's see it work out.
Dan, this is the new NFL. Okay?
You're right.
Sean McVay has flipped things on its neck, because you had this young 30-something-year-old head coach who is supposed to be this offensive guru. Okay, you give him the job, with not a whole lot of provability, but guess what? In his second year, he takes a team to the Super Bowl and loses. Okay, figures out that his quarterback ain't the guy, makes the move to get the guy, and then goes back and wins it. Okay, so what has he done at 30-something years old? Every organization in the league now is looking for that 30-something-year-old boy genius that can come in, and turn football into something that it hasn't always been, which is a bunch of BS. Because I give Sean McVay a lot of credit. He's a good head coach. He's a good play caller, but he ain't calling anything that wasn't called back in my day. Football hasn't evolved that much. But then you look at the Arizona Cardinals. They go and they bring in Cliff Kingsbury. Why? Because he's supposed to be the next boy wonder offensively that can come in and get it done. A guy who at Texas Tech never ever had a winning season, and you bring him here, and where has the Arizona Cardinals gotten? Yeah, they got to the playoffs last year, but after going 9-0, they pretty much shit the bed the rest of the way. Okay, and every organization now is looking for that young guy that is relatable to this new age player, these young players that has emotional intelligence, that can connect with these players. Listen, I don't think it's rocket science. At 57, if I was a head coach or if I was a defensive coordinator, you think I couldn't connect with my players?
Oh,
hell yeah, I could connect with them. You want to know why?
You're
Because
walking in the room doing it, Seth.
I'm gonna look my guys in the eye and I'm gonna ask them, how great do you want to be? Okay. And if you can tell me how great you want to be and what you're willing to sacrifice, then I got all of this knowledge and all of this experience, and I will pour it into you on a continuous basis. And you know what? If I show them that I can make them great, or if I'm a head coach and I show them that I can be their Moses and take them to the promised land, I don't care if you're 70. Those guys are going to follow you. So this whole nonsense about young guys being the way to go in the NFL is a bunch of BS. Because it all comes down to, can you prove to me that you care about me as a player? That's the first thing. Can you show me that you care enough that you'll do whatever's necessary to connect with me? Can you be a coach, a mentor, a friend, a father figure sometimes? Because some of these guys come in and they come from homes where they haven't had the male figure. Can you be all of those things to me, if I need that? And as a head coach, can you decipher it? Can I look at a guy and get to know that guy enough to understand what he needs and be smart enough to give him what he needs to be successful? And can you show me that you can raise my level as a player? You can raise our level as an organization, as a team, and you can take me to the promised land and give me an opportunity to get me a Vince Lombardi trophy. If you can do those things, I don't care if you're 37 or you're 77, players will follow you.
Trust, man. All of that is wrapped around trust. Finally here, Seth, and you know what? You're going to tell me it's the modern day NFL again. All these things we talked about. And then I see 6 days left on the OTAs where you're not, using quality reps. They're going to use more of the controlled scrimmages instead of playing guys during the exhibition season. And I'll tell you what Phil Simms said about that to me. He goes, look, exhibition football, you're right. Sucks. However, those are more quality reps than what you get inside of a quality controlled scrimmage with, say, the Patriots or the Jets or someone else. Those reps for linebackers, defensive ends, quarterbacks, receivers getting off the ball are a higher tone of rep because you're in a game situation. And for them not to be doing that, and I get this, they want to be healthy. I understand that. The year they won the Super Bowl, they were a mash unit. Last year, they got bounced in the opening round against the Bucs. Where do you sit on this here? Because, again, you and me, we went to camp 2-a-days for 3 months. Okay? We're out there 3-a-days, 2-a-days. We're there 3 months. Guys can get in shape. I understand it's not that game any longer, but it kind of concerns me that this is one of the reasons we talked about sense of urgency and practicing game tempo. How can you practice game tempo when you're not practicing?
Because I think you have an era of head coaches and defensive coordinators and offensive coordinators and GMs that really don't understand the speed of the game and how much it really changes from phase to phase. Like, you're in OTAs, you got one phase. By the time you get to the end of OTAs, it's sped up. Then you transition from OTAs into training camp, and the intensity level goes up about 10%. Because guys
Seth,
are trying to
let
make
me
the
stop you, Seth. Let me stop you for a second. When I went from college to pro, and I got into my first game against the Bears in '87, I looked up, it was 11 plays. I looked up, it was 22 plays. I went, holy shit. I could not believe the speed of the plays. And it's a challenge, man. I mean, it's a real thing.
Yeah, but you're talking about the ultimate transition. I'm talking about the gradual transition, especially for the young guys, because they don't understand it. The veterans get it. The young guys, they don't. It's almost a walkthrough in OTAs at the beginning. By the time you get to the end, it's sped up. By the time you get to training camp, there's probably a 10% uptick in the speed of the game, because you got 90 guys in training camp and you can only keep 53. So guys are truly competing. They should be going balls to the wall, all out, trying to show the coaches that they deserve one of those 53 spots. Then you go from training camp into the preseason game. And even though now the starters aren't even playing in the preseason, very few, which I think is a major mistake. I think that every starter should get, anywhere between a half to, 3/4 of football in those 3 games, just to prepare for the next uptick. Because by the time you go from preseason into regular season, the intensity level is going to jump another 20% just on adrenaline. I mean, you know what it's like on the first day, first game. I mean, you step out there on the field and you're doing everything you can to keep your emotions in check. And
I'm hyperventilating.
And you're trying to keep your adrenaline levels down so that you don't get to a place that by the time you get through warm-ups, that you've already shot your wad and you ain't got nothing left. Okay?
Hey, Seth, don't do that in Denver, right?
Especially in Denver. I mean, I play there, so I know. So then you turn around and you go from the regular season and then you jump over into the playoffs, which is another uptick. And if you're fortunate enough to actually get to the Super Bowl, oh, that's a whole nother level. I mean, you're hyperventilating on the bus on the way to the stadium. So I'm telling you right now, you've got coaches, some of these coaches have never even played in the NFL, never even played, collegiate ball at the highest level, and you got some GMs, who are making decisions. It's the same deal. I always say, in order to be an effective football player, you got to practice football. Yeah. And you got to practice it at such a speed, because I don't care how much you train and I don't care how hard you practice, you can never, ever, ever, ever duplicate the level of intensity and the speed of the game on Sunday. So the reason why you practice as hard as you can and as fast as you can in practice is because you're trying to get as close to that as you possibly can, because it's darn near impossible to ever reach that. And this is the thing that I don't think head coaches, position coaches, offensive, defensive coordinators, GMs, and even owners to a certain extent even understand, that injuries are a part of the game and you can't do a damn thing about it. If you try to protect the guy throughout preseason and he goes into the first game of the season, the first series, and he gets a soft tissue injury, guess what? You contributed to that because you held him from being able to galvanize and callous his body in training camp enough so that when he got hit during that first game, that it was just a little nick and it's not something that bothers him. Guess what? Now he's on the show for 3 weeks and he's got to come back in 3 weeks and go through that process all over again. I just don't understand it. It makes no sense to me whatsoever.
I'm going to leave you with this. So Wilbur Marshall, I had a conversation with him the other day and I go, I'm becoming boys with Seth. He goes, only guy that was as good as me during our time. I went, what? He goes, the only guy, man, that could knock the shit out of people like me was Seth Joyner, man. You make sure you tell him I said that. I'm a big Wilbur Marshall fan, man, and That was some compliment, man, because
Hey, listen, man.
he's
Hey,
the
man,
hitter.
I got a chance to play with that dude, and when I was here in Arizona, Buddy brought him in for a year, man. I absolutely love Wilbur Marshall, man. Everybody always try to make the comparison between, the Bears defense and the Eagles defense, and people
I
try
thought
to.
you guys were completely different groups.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. But listen, Wilbur's older than me, so I got a chance to watch him play as I was coming up. I love that dude. You talking about a natural born killer? I mean, there's none like him, and he's another guy why I don't understand. People don't talk about in terms of Hall of Fame and things like that. I mean, he was one of the first guys that was just 3-down player, could rush the passer, could cover backs and tight ends out of the backfield, could fit gaps and play the run, and was just nasty, man. He didn't try to hit you; he tried to hurt you, man.
Hey, Seth, I got to tell you this story, man, before you go here. So, Highsmith, we're playing against the Gators, and he hits Alonzo so freaking hard, knocks his helmet off his head, chin straps everywhere, and he leans over, and Highsmith walks over to the side, and then I go, "Hey, man, what'd Wilbur tell you?" He goes, "He told me he was going to kill me the next time." And I went like this to him. I go, "What would you say back to him?" He goes, "I told him I believed him."
Yeah, that sounds like Wilbur. I mean, listen, that was an era of football, when intimidation was a big part of the game.
Well, that was a big part of your defense.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, it was intimidation.
You think that defense could play in today's NFL?
No, because listen,
Andre Waters.
The problem with football now is that it's offense centric in such a major way. I had no problem with them making adjustments to the game, to bring about the uptick of offense in the game, because there was a point in time in the late 80s, early 90s where the defense just dominated. When you had these, 10 to 13 games and 14 to 10 games, and it just wasn't exciting. So I can understand that, but you've gone so far to the left in trying to figure out how you make the game more offensive centric, that you've taken the ability of defenses to be what they were out of the equation. Listen, there was a time where you could intimidate a guy. Like, you go back to that Monday night game where we played against the Houston Oilers on Monday night. Wes Hawkins, hits Ernest Givens with a forearm and breaks his nose, and Ernest Givens comes out with two gauges sticking out of his nose.
I saw it on film. I'm watching.
Listen,
hey.
after that hit, there wasn't a Houston Oilers wide receiver that wanted to run across the middle. We relegated them to a running team, and a team that would only throw the ball outside the numbers, because they didn't want to run. Those wide receivers would not run routes across the middle because they were scared that Wes Hopkins was going to knock them out, or Andre Waters was going to bloody them out. Now, so you take that out of the game, and now what do you got? You got these diva wide receivers, this chicken strutting across the field, not worrying about having their head taken off, because guess what? If they can't see you and you take them out, it's a 15-yard penalty, and your ass is going to get fined on Wednesday.
Hey, that's why I say this to people. That's why they chirp more now, is because guys like Seth Joyner, who were patrolling that middle, you kept your faces shut. Dude, Jerry Rice and even Andre Rison, none of those guys bark going across the middle.
Listen.
And Andre Rison would be a horror show today in today's NFL. He'd be barking all over you.
I can remember I almost knocked myself out one game. We were playing against the Cowboys, and Michael Irvin was a big talker. And he ran a route early in the game. He came across and said, "Yeah, I watched you on film. You was running your damn mouth last week." I said, "You bring your ass across here, I'm gonna put you to sleep." So he catches a slant, and I see it, and man, I'm coming 100 miles an hour, and I'm telling you right now, he crawled under the carpet at the vet, and I was like missiling. I was trying to get him, and I went over top of him and bumped my head on the ground, and I scarred my helmet up, and man, I saw stars and birds was chirping and everything. I mean, I had to come out of the game, man. I was trying to take him out so bad, but I mean, that style of football, is over. We're not going to see.
Wait a minute, Seth. You'd be Vontae Burfict in today's game, right? Is that what?
can't play it. I mean, listen, it's not that guy couldn't play it towards.
No, I think he was a good player.
Yeah, I mean, and towards, I'm just saying, towards the end of his career, it wasn't that he couldn't continue to play. He couldn't play under the auspices of the new rules. Yeah. I mean, even when he went to the Raiders, you know, Gruden brings him in and he knocks somebody out and gets fined and suspended. He can't play in today's game. So when you talk about guys from our era having to play in today's game, absolutely. And guys from today's era couldn't play in our era either, because guess what? You know, coaches would look like them, man, you gonna hit somebody, or you just gonna run around out here acting like a pussy? If you ain't gonna hit somebody, we're gonna have to get you out of here and bring somebody else in, because that's the way they would be viewed in our age of football if they didn't want to hit.
That's exactly right. Hey, Seth, I am so proud to be playing with you now, and welcome aboard, dude. I mean, your analysis is as good as ever, and I'll tell you what, your leadership, I see why that Eagle team was just an absolutely terror show when you guys were on defense there, man. I'm proud to be your friend. Thank you so much for doing this and spending so much time with me, as you always do, and welcome aboard. Thank you so much, Seth.
You got it, man. Look forward to it.
You got it. Seth Joyner, the great Seth Joyner, joining JAKIB Sports. Don't forget, on our post-game show too. Really appreciate him spending a lot of time with me. Don't forget our friends at Morgan & Morgan, where the fee is free. Folks, if you're hurt or injured on the job, one of the most important things that you could possibly do for your family is finding that attorney that is right for you. You got it. For the people is not a slogan, it is who they are. For the past 30 years, Morgan & Morgan has done this. They've collected over $13.5 billion worth of compensation for their clients. 800 attorneys strong in offices in Philly, New York, and in Florida. They always say this to you. There's no such thing as a fender bender with Morgan & Morgan. Call them, 800-512-1600. That's 800-512-1600. The call is free. The consultation's free. 800-512-1600. Open 24/7, 7 days a week. And when you call Morgan & Morgan, you tell them Big Sil sent you.
Many times when people are injured at a place of business, they don't realize they may have a case. The fact is, injuries should not happen. And most of the time when someone is injured, someone is at fault. Maybe the store manager installed a cheap, slippery floor, or there wasn't proper security. After an injury at a hotel, restaurant, store, or any place of business, it's so important to call us. Time matters, size matters. Morgan & Morgan, for the people.com.